Good evening. Welcome to the Fright Files. I'm Chris Harmon, but tonight you can call me Dr. Fright. This evening you will hear 7 frightful stories, ranging from the least frightful to the most frightful of them all. But before we begin, I need you to ask yourself one question. Can you, the viewers, withstand all 7 stories? Let's begin, shall we? I call this story The Lady in White. Underground tunnels for cars are terrifying enough on their own. There's the darkness, the claustrophobic feeling of being below ground, and the inhuman howl that traffic makes as it passes through. Engines' noise echoing off the stark concrete walls. Yes, and at nighttime, when the traffic is at a minimum, it just gets worse, because if anything bad happens, you've got no escape but to go forward or turn around. You could still be in the tunnels for what feels like an eternity, which means they're not quite as unusual a setting for a contemporary ghost story as you might think. One such modern myth sprung up with regards to the Belkin tunnels in Switzerland, which connects Basel to China. In the form of the White Woman. Beginning in 1981, stories of an old white-clothed woman begin circulating, who appears out of complete nowhere and sometimes tries to catch a ride off drivers. After being picked up by local townsmen, police received dozens of phone calls of people claiming to see the White Woman. In 1983, where 2 jurists claimed to have picked up a pale, middle-aged woman who, when asked if she was okay, she replied no. But unfortunately not. I am not well at all, said the White Woman. Now something really awful is going to happen. Something very dreadful. When the pair locked, when the people looked to the back seat where the hitchhiker had sat, they found she had disappeared. She had vanished. The White Woman was indeed gone. Let's move on to story number 2. I call this terrifying tale The Ghost Ship. Metro network is one of the best in Europe, traveling across every corner of the Swedish capital, both under and overground. The Silver Pillen, or Silver Arrow, was an old model of Metro's train, so named because of its shiny aluminum shell. Now, between its introduction in the 60s and discontinuation in 1996, it was usually used as a backup train if others broke down. Now, the interiors were made and were more than the usual cars, with signs of partly removed graffiti, contributing to the reputation of the Silver Pillen as different, adding to the reputation, or perhaps bolstered by it, are the numerous ghost stories and urban legends that have sprung up about the Silver Pillen. Since it was used only when other metro cars had broken down and needed replacing, the average Stockholm dweller rarely saw a silver arrow in action, adding further to the mystique surrounding them. Seeing them at night would be especially spooky, quite a spooky event. The unfamiliar car glowing as its metal shell reflected the street lamps, giving it an all-around ghostly look. Stories about the Silver Pillen usually connect its abandoned Kaimin metro station on line 11. The origin of the delightful saying, "Only the dead get off." People claim that the train picks up its spirit passengers and speeds through the city after midnight, only sometimes stopping to pick up passengers. They either disappear forever or later get off weeks, months, even years after they have embarked. So I hereby declare this story, "Only the dead get off." I want to thank everybody in the chat room and every Frightful fan watching, because if you've made it this far, you are a fan of the Dr. Fright. Let's move on to our next frightful tale. This tale leaves nothing behind. This tale is one of the most frightful tales you may have ever heard. I call this tale Murdered Wife That Haunts the Library. The life of Sophia Eberling was a short and tragic one. Having embarked and immigrated from Russia to the United States as a young woman, she found herself married to Hugo Eberling, a well-known businessman with whom she bore 2 daughters, Lillian and Alice. Following Hugo's death in 1928, she remarried, taking up with a man named Jacob Benz in her home on Harvey, North Dakota. It is unknown if this second marriage was particularly tumultuous, but what is known is that Benz bludgeoned his wife to death not long after. Now, despite cleaning up the crime scene and trying to make it look like Sophia had died in a car accident, Benz was caught out by a visitor, by Lillian, who noticed the blood splattered in her deceased mother's bedroom. Benz admitted to the crime and was sentenced to life in prison, where he himself died in 1944. Yeah, it's a sad story, and one which has all the hallmarks of a later haunting, a violent, horrible death at the hands of a loved one. The victim, burdened with unfinished business, which is perhaps why, when author William Jacob began working in a library built on the land of the old Eberling family home, he found himself the victim of cold chills, moving furniture, and a glimpsed sight of the manifestation of the murdered Sophia. According to Jackson, the librarian's office was built in the exact spot where Sophia's bedroom was, the part of the house she was killed, and apparently her final resting place. Many people have heard of animals coming back to their owners. Many people have heard stories, signs, and even gruesome tales of owners loving their pets so much that it scares them and haunts them to lose them. This next tale is called The Bridge That Calls Dogs to Their Makers. The Overton Bridge near Dunfermline, Scotland, seems to call dogs to leap to their death. Since the 1950s, some 50 canines have perished, and hundreds more have jumped but survived, with some even returning to leap again onto the rocks 50 feet below. In terms of scientific truth, it is unlikely that dogs are capable of forming an intent to die. Yet something is lurking the animals, luring the animals off the bridge, often from the very same spot on dry summer days. Many theories have surfaced, including that the bridge is haunted by a ghost. In 2010, the Scottish Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals sent a representative to investigate these unexplainable mysteries. While they decided that most likely a mink or other mammal was making the area below with an almost irresistible scent, they also admitted that the bridge has a strange feeling, a feeling that you cannot shake off once you approach or visit. Whatever is causing this weird phenomenon, dog owners would be wise to take heed and keep their dogs on leashes. Would you take your dog for a walk on that bridge? Would you yourself be willing to visit? This next story is called Dead at Sea. On December 4th, 1872, a British-American ship called the Mary Celeste was found empty and adrift in the Atlantic. It was seaworthy and had its cargo full intact, except for a lifeboat, which seemingly had been aborted in an orderly fashion. But why? Like many strange ocean mysteries, we may never know the truth because no one on board was ever heard from again. You see, in 1872, November, the Mary Celeste set sail from New York bound for Genoa, Italy. She was managed by Captain Benjamin Briggs and 7 crew members, and also Briggs' wife and their 2-year-old daughter. The ship had plenty of supplies, including luxuries like a sewing machine and an upright piano. Experts agree that to abandon a seaworthy ship, something extraordinary and alarming must have happened. Having the last entry on the ship's daily log revealed nothing unusual, and everything inside the ship appeared to be in order. So what happened? As the Fright Files continue, let's take a look at what occurred. Now, theories over the years have included many theories, including pirate attacks and even an assault by a giant octopus, even being killed by a sea monster. In recent years, scientists have even proposed the theory that fumes from alcohol on board caused an explosion that as a result of a scientific anomaly. Although there was no signs of burning. But what was terrifying enough that Briggs ordered everyone into the lifeboat. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the Fright File fans who are here tonight watching. If you have a story you would like Dr. Fright to read to the world, please submit your story at the address in the banner. And if you're all still here with us and you haven't ran away, we shall move on to the next story. This next story gets even more frightful, even more haunting, as we begin to discuss the ghost in the darkness. This next story may be a little too much for some to handle, but if you're a Fright Files fan, then prepare to enter the darkness. Prepare to enter. You see, while walking back from an evening bull hunt, the witness says I had about a mile walk through the swamps here in Louisiana. While walking with a small flashlight, I started to hear something following in the leaves behind me. I stopped and spun around, and it stopped. I started, and it started. I started again, and it started again, following me from behind. I again looked with a small flashlight, but could not see anything. Then I started to hear coyotes. In my mind, I'm thinking, I'm being stalked. I take my large flashlight out and scan the woods. But the closer I got to the truck, the faster I walked. And the faster I walked, the louder and faster the sound gets. I panic and I rush and I run as quick as I can. I could hear the sounds getting closer and closer. By the time I get to the edge of the woods, I'm almost in a full sprint. Alone and alarmed by only with my bow. As I clear the woods, the noise slowly begins to stop. I sling my stand off my shoulders and grab my 9mm out of my truck, getting ready to fire and shoot at whatever is coming towards me. Five minutes pass and nothing happens. As I load my stand into my truck, I notice that the rope I used to pull my bow up had gotten untied and was dragging in the leaves behind me. I look all around and see nothing. I hurried and got to my truck and spun off. Our last and final story is the most frightful of them all. I call this story True Horror. A place originally named Illinois Asylum for the Incurable Insane is going to be the happiest place on earth. And for copyright issues and reasons, could never be named itself as such either. But throw a ghost into the mix, and you've got a recipe for true horror. Dr. George Seller, the first director of what is now called the Peoria State Hospital, was one of the first to document the story of the spirit that come to be known as Old Book. The hospital had existed in a different form before Zeller reopened it in 1902 with a new and more elegant, enlightened view of how mental health issues should be treated. In fact, the original building had never been used. Constructed to look more like a castle than a place for progressive treatments. The eeriness truly began during Seller's time there, though as recounted in his book, Befriending, it was decided early on that anybody who died there while working or attending the hospital would be shipped off to relatives, or, if they were unclaimed, buried on the asylum grounds. It was later fate that befell Manuel A. Bookbinder, a patient who worked with the burial crew until his death. Zeller and hundreds of other patients and employees saw Old Book's figure at his funeral, weeping over by the elm in the Patterns field. Since then, Old Book, a nickname, was even his real name. He had suffered a breakdown while working at a printing press and nobody knew his actual identity. He was seen and has been seen at dozens of funerals on the ground, crying, weeping by the old elm, scaring everybody that comes on the property when they hear the cries. Today, visitors claim to hear his otherworldly sobs coming from the trees, as if an old abandoned mental hospital wasn't creepy on its own. You have been watching the Fright Files, and if you're still here, thank you for sitting through all 7 frightful tales. Those that make it through all 7 tales are frightful legends in their own right. If you, the viewers, have a story you would like Dr. Fright to read, please send and submit your stories to the address below in the banner. And please like and subscribe so you know when the next episode of the Fright Files comes on. See you next week for another episode of the Fright Files.